Ever try to buy a car and the dealership's like, nope, sorry, you can only buy on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and the second Saturday of the month.
Oh, my God.
Sounds ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what Dr. Joe Alice Blondin, who is the president of Clark State College, says is happening in higher education.
Really?
Yeah, because we're so stuck on credit hours and semesters.
Huh.
We're going to be diving deep into her perspective on student learning outcomes, or SLOs.
Okay, SLOs, got it. So instead of just grades or how long you're sitting in a classroom,
Yeah.
SLOs are about what you can actually do with what you've learned?
Exactly. And this is so important now with all the different ways people are learning and showing their skills these days.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Blondin argues that colleges need to get a lot better in showing what students can actually achieve.
It's like showing what you can do, not just the grade you got.
Exactly. And she's also calling out the whole credit hour thing.
Oh, yeah.
She basically says it's like killing curiosity.
How so?
Because students are so focused on just getting the credits to graduate
Right.
that they might not actually be learning for the joy of learning.
Interesting.
Yeah, it really is a different way to look at it, isn't it?
It is.
If you're paying per credit, are you going to take that fascinating elective?
Yeah, true.
That won't count towards your degree.
Probably not.
Probably not.
No.
But it could be so enriching, right?
Totally.
So Dr. Blondin actually suggests a pretty radical idea.
Okay, I'm listening.
A subscription model for college.
What?
It's like Netflix for knowledge.
Well, hold on.
You can just learn what you need when you need it throughout your life.
That would be a game changer.
It really would.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
speaking of real-world issues, she jumps right into the big question, are colleges truly learner-centric?
I like how she just puts it right out there.
Yeah, she doesn't hold back.
No, she doesn't.
She argues that the way we fund and structure higher education often prioritizes students just finishing their degrees,
Okay.
whether they've actually learned anything or not.
So it's like we're rewarding schools just for pushing students through the system,
Unfortunately, yes.
even if they're not ready for what comes after graduation.
And that's where institutional biases can come in.
Oh, how so?
You know, colleges might favor programs that have high completion rates,
Uh-huh.
even if those programs don't lead to good jobs.
All about the numbers, huh?
It's all about those graduation numbers.
Yeah.
So it sounds like Dr. Blondin wants us to rethink the whole purpose of college,
Okay, I'm interested.
to move away from just checking boxes and focus on actually preparing students for life after college.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and that's where SLOs come in.
Ah, okay.
They can help shift the focus from just completing courses to demonstrating real-world skills and knowledge.
So how does she think we should actually use SLOs to make this happen?
Well, she's a big advocate for getting faculty, students, and employers all involved in shaping and assessing these SLOs.
Wait, so businesses would have a say in what students are learning?
Exactly. It makes sense, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
By involving employers, you ensure that what's being taught in the classroom actually aligns with what's needed in the workplace.
It closes that gap between theory and practice.
Exactly.
Yeah, that so many grads struggle with.
This is where I get a little nervous.
Oh, why?
Wouldn't that turn colleges into just job training centers?
That's a good point.
What about the value of a broad education? You know, learning for learning's sake.
I see your concern. Dr. Blondin acknowledges that balance is key.
Okay, good.
It's not about turning colleges into vocational schools.
Right.
It's about making sure students develop a strong foundation of knowledge and the practical skills to actually apply that knowledge in the real world.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So it's about being intentional with how we design education,
Right.
making sure it serves both the individual student's goals and the needs of a changing workforce.
Exactly. And to Dr. Blondin, SLOs are a key tool in achieving that.
So let's dig a little deeper into how these SLOs actually work.
Okay, let's do it.
What are some examples of how they could be used to measure real-world skills?
Well, think about it this way. Instead of just relying on exams or papers, imagine students demonstrating their skills through real-world projects,
Okay,
building portfolios that showcase their abilities,
I like that.
or even getting assessed by industry professionals
Oh, wow.
through internships or apprenticeships.
So it's about proving you can actually do the thing,
Yes.
not just write about it.
Exactly.
But how do we make sure those assessments are fair?
That's a good question.
What about students who might not have the same opportunities,
Yeah.
like access to paid internships?
Right.
Or, maybe they have family obligations that prevent them from doing an internship.
Mm-hmm. That's where the idea of equitable assessment comes in,
Okay.
which Dr. Blondin emphasizes a lot.
Yeah,
It's about recognizing that not all students start from the same place,
Right.
and making sure everyone has a fair shot at demonstrating their competencies.
It's not just about changing what we assess,
Right.
but also how we need to be mindful of those potential biases.
Yes.
And make sure those assessments are designed to be inclusive.
Absolutely. Remember the welding student Dr. Blondin mentioned?
Oh, yeah, he just needed that one specific welding class
Right.
to improve his skills and get a raise.
But the system forced him into an associate degree track.
Just to get financial aid.
Exactly.
It's like we're so focused on degrees and credit that we're forgetting about the individual learner's goals.
It can definitely happen.
And that brings us to another key point.
Okay.
Recognizing and valuing learning that happens outside the traditional classroom.
Ah, yes.
This is where things like prior learning assessment come in.
So giving students credit for skills they've already acquired through work experience, military service,
or even just personal projects.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging that learning happens everywhere.
It really does.
Not just in college.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about giving students a way to translate those experiences into like academic currency.
So it all ties back to that big question Dr. Blondin posed earlier.
Right.
Are we really putting the learner at the center?
And it sounds like the answer is not always.
Yeah, not always.
She's pretty upfront about the challenges.
Yeah.
She calls out those rigid funding models that reward colleges for just pushing students through the system.
Right.
Regardless of whether they've actually learned anything.
And she argues that this focus on completion over competency is actually hurting students in the long run.
It is.
Because they might end up with a degree,
Yeah.
but not the skills they need to actually succeed.
Which is the whole point, right?
Yeah, and it can perpetuate those institutional biases we talked about earlier.
Right.
Where colleges prioritize programs with high completion rates, even if those programs don't lead to good jobs or fulfilling careers.
And what's the solution?
Right. What do we do?
How do we break free from this credit hour mindset and create a system that really prioritizes learning?
It's a big question.
It is. Dr. Blondin suggests a pretty radical idea.
Okay, let's hear it.
Tie funding to outcomes instead of just enrollment or completion.
Whoa.
Reward colleges for producing graduates who are actually prepared for the workforce.
Interesting.
And who can contribute meaningfully to society.
That is a huge shift.
It is.
But I can see how it would force colleges to get serious about aligning their programs with real-world needs.
Exactly. And it would encourage them to invest more in things like competency-based education, personalized learning pathways, and support services that actually help students succeed.
It sounds like Dr. Blondin is calling for a total transformation of higher education.
She is.
Not just, tweaking around the edges.
Yeah, and it's not going to be easy.
No.
It requires a real shift in mindset from faculty and administrators to policymakers and even students themselves.
But it sounds like she believes it's absolutely necessary if we want higher education to remain relevant and valuable in the 21st century.
She does, and she leaves us with this powerful image to illustrate her point. She talks about a student walking into their first day on the job, not with a textbook or a transcript, but with the skills, knowledge, and confidence to actually do the work.
It's a great image.
It really is.
It makes you think differently about what it means to be educated.
Yeah.
What role colleges should play in preparing students for life after graduation.
It's a call to action for all of us.
I think so, too.
Whether we're faculty, administrators, students, or employers.
Then we'll have a role to play.
We need to start asking those tough questions about the purpose of higher education. How can we make it more relevant and equitable for everyone?
So where do we go from here?
Yeah. What are some concrete steps we can take to move toward this more learner-centric, competency-based model of education?
It feels like a really big task.
It is a big task.
Yeah.
But I think Dr. Blondin would say it starts with changing the conversation.
Okay, how so?
We need to stop talking about education as a transaction.
Right.
About credits and degrees. And start talking about it as an investment in human potential.
I like that.
We need to value learning for learning's sake, but also make sure that learning is connected to real-world outcomes and opportunities.
And we need to get everyone involved in this conversation.
Yes.
Faculty, students, employers, policymakers.
Absolutely. It's going to take a village, right?
Yeah, it's going to take all of us because it's such a complex system.
We need to break down those silos.
Oh, yeah. Those silos between academia and the workforce.
Yeah.
Different types of institutions.
Right, even between different disciplines.
Be willing to experiment, learn from each other, and embrace new approaches to teaching, learning, and assessing.
This has been a good reminder.
It has.
That education isn't one size fits all.
It's not.
Every student has their own unique strengths, interests, and goals. We need to create a system that recognizes and nurtures that diversity.
And going forward, let's keep Dr. Blondin's words in mind. No one ever handed me a blue book on my first day of work.
Powerful stuff.
It is.
Let's challenge ourselves to create an education system that prepares students not for exams, but for the real world.
The real world, challenges and opportunities that await them.
That's what it's all about.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me.
Me too.
It's made me think differently about, what it means to be educated.
Yeah.
And what role colleges should play in preparing students for life after graduation.
Absolutely.
So as you all go about your day, think about this. What are the blue books we're still clinging to in our own fields?
Good question.
What are the real-world skills and competencies that matter most?
Yeah, think about it.
And how can we work together to ensure that the next generation is equipped to not just pass a test,
right,
but to truly thrive?
That's the goal.